Welcome back in Alive Now. I'm Austin Westfall. You've been looking at a live image of Jerusalem. We continue to monitor the breaking news out of the Middle East. The Foundation for the Defense of Democracy's CEO, Mark Dubowitz, joining us over the phone. Mark, do you have me?
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Mark, your initial reaction to some of the news that we're seeing out of the region?
Well, I think it was an extraordinary operation. I mean, this is, I think, even the sort of battle damage assessment, as they call it, already demonstrates some really early successes, and the information obviously is early and still coming in, but it looks like the Israelis have gone after a wide range of targets. They've gone after nuclear, air defenses, military personnel, military infrastructure, nuclear scientists. It looks like they've gone after top commanders. The top IRGC commander is dead. The Army Chief of Staff is dead. The IRGC aerospace commander has been killed. These are the top echelon of the security and military forces of the regime. They're also going after nuclear sites. They're working nuclear infrastructure, the enrichment facilities. Multiple more locations are planned. It looks like this is an Israeli plan to really finish this, a comprehensive strike. They've killed a number of nuclear scientists who are involved in building the warhead to complete the Iranian nuclear weapon. And, again, I think they've been able to identify with precision intelligence and really have killed a number of these top commanders in their houses while they were asleep. So it's really a remarkable campaign of precision intelligence by Mossad and Israel's Unit 8200, which is their equivalent of the NSA, as well as the Israeli Air Force. And so quite a remarkable operation, and I think it's really just in phase one already.
So I've heard that you know a thing or two about the progress that's been made about Iran's nuclear program. This is something I was talking about with the last guest. And I'm not sure if you've seen, but the IDF just posted on their social accounts a recap, if you will, kind of explaining the Iranian nuclear program, how it's progressed in recent months and years. We have the tweet up on our screen right now. Part of it says, the IDF, again quoting, they say recent intelligence shows that Iran is nearing the point of no return in its race toward a nuclear weapon. Mark, what kind of progress have they made? How close are they to the bomb?
Well, they're very close. They have enough enriched material for 17 bombs worth. Could break out in a matter of days. They have they've been working on the warhead, the weapon, and it seems like there's new intelligence coming in from the Israelis that the supreme leader has knowledge of that, has given an order to his weapon scientists. There have been reports that they've begun work on it. We're not sure exactly what work, but certainly it may be initial computer modeling, it may be metallurgy work, it may actually be much more expansive than U.S. intelligence knew about it. And there was always somewhat of a disagreement between U.S. intel and Israeli intel about the scope and the progress that they were making on the warhead. But both intelligence communities agreed that Iran had begun preliminary work. So you've got the warhead, you've got the highly enriched uranium, you've got an inventory of 3,000 ballistic missiles, all capable of delivering nuclear warheads. You've got the Iranians having admitted to starting a new facility to enrich uranium to weapons grade at a place that the Israelis call Salahin, which is near the Natanz facility, which is going to go even deeper underground than the current buried under a mountain enrichment facilities. This one was going to go over 100 meters underground, hardened, fortified with concrete, really something that would be probably immune from Israeli and even American strikes. So if that was completed, Israel was concerned that Iran's nuclear program would reach a zone of immunity, really be fully immunized. And so clear indications, not just from the Israelis or from the Americans, but the International Atomic Energy Agency, UN weapons inspectors, finding evidence of Iranian nuclear duplicity, and the International Atomic Energy Board of Governors just referred Iran for the first time in 20 years to the UN Security Council for its violations of its obligations under the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So overwhelming evidence that Iran has a nuclear weapons program, as well as an intercontinental ballistic missile program, which is designed only for a nuclear warhead and is only designed to threaten and to strike the American homeland. So not only a threat to Israel and our Gulf allies, but a clear and present threat to the United States.
We've been keeping up with Andrea Stricker with the FDD. She just posted that the IDF has released slides about Iran's efforts in recent months to move closer to construction of nuclear weapons. She posts a summary on her X account saying, Supreme Leader Khamenei was aware and directed secrecy about the program. She says that senior officials and knowledgeable scientists were involved. Iran was advancing readiness to make components of nuclear weapons, including neutron sources, uranium metal using its enriched uranium stock, and explosives. We are talking about some complex stuff here, Mark, but you say that these are blockbuster revelations. I got to ask you, if you could put this in layman's terms for us, how do the Iranians get a hold of what's needed to make a nuclear weapon? Who are their allies? Do they need any to make this happen?
Yeah, I mean, they've certainly had help over the years from the Chinese, from the Russians, potentially from the North Koreans. Many of their original centrifuge designs came from A.Q. Khan, the Pakistani master of the Pakistani nuclear weapons program, who proliferated these designs and the technical knowledge to Iran and North Korea, Libya, and elsewhere. So they've had technical assistance in the past, and certainly ongoing advice and technology that they've procured from around the world. But they've also domesticated a lot of this knowledge and technical ability, and have built up an expansive nuclear weapons program, particularly under President Biden, unfortunately. When President Biden came into office and decided to abandon the maximum pressure campaign of Trump and try to negotiate or renegotiate another nuclear deal, the Iranians just began massively expanding their nuclear program and began enriching from low levels of 3.67% to 20% to 60% to 84%, which is effectively weapons-grade uranium, installed thousands of advanced centrifuges, broke ground on this Salahin facility that I talked about earlier that would create a zone of immunity for them, and did all of this with, Iranian nuclear scientists and with the technical knowledge that they had developed and with the equipment that they had procured over really decades of building out this nuclear program.
We're looking at a live vantage point of Jerusalem on what is now Friday morning, 7:17 in the morning, Israel Standard Time. What are you watching for next? We have been looking out for any sort of response from the Iranians. I was speaking with Dr. Alon Burstein earlier this evening, and he said that he was reading some rumors online that they could strike as soon as 2 hours after Israel strikes. Is that characteristic of Iran to strike back so quickly, or might we expect something in due time, in a longer amount of time?
Well, they know that they're going to be facing multiple rounds of Israeli strikes, and they've seen already their early devastation to both their nuclear program and to their leadership assets. And so they may respond quickly instead of continuing to take quite a beating. They may also decide to wait, and I think it's going to be really important. What I'm watching for is what President Trump says. It's really important how he communicates this. If he communicates to the Supreme Leader of Iran that he had offered a very generous deal, he'd given them 60 days, that clock ran out today, but he can come back to the negotiating table and agree to fully dismantle his program, to stop enrichment. President Trump had offered this. This would have been the peaceful option for Khamenei to take, and President Trump made it clear that if he took that option, he would support massive investment inside Iran and really to sort of make Iran great again. But of course, Khamenei rejected that offer and has been recalcitrant at the negotiating table. President Trump can say, come back to the table. Steve Witkoff, the lead negotiator, will meet your negotiator, Arakchi, in Oman to negotiate a deal. Or the United States may join Israel in destroying what's left of Iran's nuclear program. And I think could also hold the regime's survival at risk. I think if President Trump sends that message, that may temper the response of the Iranians. If there's any sense of distance between Washington and Jerusalem on this, I think all that does is encourage a severe Iranian retaliation and may encourage the kind of escalation that I think the president is going to want to avoid.
So, Mark, I'm going to read you a post from Fox's Pentagon correspondent. She quotes the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the aggressive actions of the Zionist regime against Iran could not have been carried out without coordination with and approval of the United States. Thus, the U.S. government, as the main supporter of this regime, will be held responsible for the dangerous consequences of Israel's adventurism. Again, that's the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This was just posted. So Iran saying that the U.S. will be held responsible for what's happened. What avenues, Mark, does Iran have in order to get any sort of payback, if you will, against the United States? What levers do they have at their disposal?
Well, first of all, I think the foreign ministry is right. I mean, I don't usually, agree with the regime in Iran, but I think they're right. I mean, I think there's close coordination between the United States and Israel. I don't think the Israelis would have gone without American support. I think that there were probably limited U.S. Military or any military capabilities used in the offensive action. But I think there's been close coordination between the IDF and U.S. Central Command, and certainly President Trump. I think in recent weeks and days, I think his rhetoric and actions have, if anything, sort of lulled the regime into a false assumption that there wouldn't be strikes. So I think that was helpful in making sure that the regime leadership and regime targets were not prepared. How can the Iranians respond? Well, they got to be very careful in going after the United States. I mean, they need to understand that President Trump is prepared to use military force. The last time that they didn't listen to him and rushed the U.S. embassy in Baghdad and killed a U.S. contractor, President Trump killed Qasem Soleimani, the IRGC Quds Force commander, who was Iran's most dangerous and experienced battlefield commander, somebody that President Obama and President Bush weren't prepared to target. So Premier Ali Khamenei is going to be very careful in going after U.S. personnel, U.S. assets, and certainly the U.S. homeland. So he has lots of options to cause havoc and violence, but he also has to be very cognizant of the fact that if he targets America and hurts Americans, that's really when he could risk his regime and see the end of the regime.
More context from Jennifer Griffin. She says that Brett Baer, Fox News anchor Brett Baer, has spoken to President Trump by phone tonight following the airstrikes. Here's what he said. President Trump was aware of the strikes beforehand. There were no surprises, but the U.S. was not involved militarily in the strikes. No surprises here, Mark, as you alluded to. Let me ask you about the Israeli general public, because I was speaking with some of our guests earlier today about how we got here. My curiosity here is, do we have any indication of how the Israeli public at large feels about striking Iran in such a way? Is there any reliable polling to suggest which way the Israeli public falls about de-escalating Iran's nuclear program?
Yeah, I mean, the polling I've seen certainly over the years and months is overwhelming Israeli support for getting rid of Iran's nuclear weapons program. I mean, I think the vast majority of Israelis understand that weapon represents an existential threat to the survival of the state of Israel. The regime in Iran has made no secrets of the fact that they want to destroy Israel. They built a ring of fire around Israel. They supported, financed, and greenlit the October 7th attack by Hamas against Israel, which was the worst attack against Jews, single-day attack since the Holocaust. So since October 7th, there's no Israeli that's under the illusion that if Iran were to get weapons of mass destruction, that the regime would use those either directly to destroy Israel or would use that to blackmail Israeli prime ministers, American presidents, and use its proxy army and its missiles to rain death on the Israeli public. So no Israelis under any illusion, and I think the majority of Israelis certainly support what happened tonight, and certainly politically across the political spectrum. I mean, from left to right, Israeli leaders are united in this, from Yair Lapid and Yair Golan on the left to Naftali Bennett on the center to center-right, to obviously Prime Minister Netanyahu and people even to the right of him. So across the political spectrum, overwhelming political support.
Right now on the screen, Mark, we're showing some of the video from earlier, showing some of the damage from the blasts. We also have video of at least one of the strikes, two of the strikes perhaps. Of course, we'll wait until morning. Perhaps more video of what happened will come through, but for now, this is all we have to work with. One big question I have about all of this is, where does Iran and Israel's relationship fit in here? So I have talked almost nightly about the Israel-Hamas war since October 7th, 2023. And I remember one facet of the war that we talked about so often in the early months was the idea that this war was being fought largely through proxies. Israel was fighting directly with Hamas. For a time, they were having back and forth with Hezbollah. That got intense at times. The Houthis have been another story as well. In fact, the Houthis have managed to pierce the Iron Dome on occasion. My question for you, though, is what does it say about the Iran-Israeli relationship and the Middle East at large that we're now seeing for, I believe, a third time, Iran and Israel actually directing strikes at each other instead of through proxies? What does that say about the state of affairs in the Middle East, Mark?
Well, I think it demonstrates, as you said, twice last year in April and October, and now this year in June, that the Supreme Leader Khamenei and the Revolutionary Guards of Iran have decided to take their war with Israel out of the shadows, a war that they had been fighting through these terror proxies. This kind of ring of fire that had surrounded Israel, where Israel was really fighting with the tentacles of the octopus and not hitting the head of the octopus, and that the ground rules of this war have changed, and I think changed in Israel's favor, as Israel has severely degraded this so-called axis of resistance that Khamenei had built, which I call this axis of miseries, done severe damage to Hezbollah, severely degraded Hamas, taken out key capabilities of the regime, being able to kill Hamas terrorists in IRGC safe houses in Tehran, penetrated, again, and you see some of the results of that tonight, really penetrated at every area of the Iranian security establishment, and also been able to find really thousands of Iranians who just, the millions of Iranians who despise this regime and the thousands of Iranians prepared to work with Mossad in order to try to bring down this regime. It's really put the Israelis on offense for the first time. And I think October 7th, in that respect, as horrific as an event it was for Israel, it really changed the rules of the game, that the Israelis were no longer prepared to play defense, no longer prepared to try to contain the threat, no longer were looking to de-escalate while Khamenei built these terror armies around them and moved ahead on a nuclear weapons program. Israel would now go on offense. And I think you've seen the results of that since April of last year, certainly through September and October, and now most dramatically tonight. And we'll have to get, the battle damage assessment. Obviously going to be multiple days of strikes, and we'll see what is left standing inside the Islamic Republic. But I still think there's dangerous days ahead. I mean, the regime has at least 3,000 ballistic missiles and other cruise missiles and thousands of drones and It's got sleeper cells around the world. It's got still, Houthis and Iraqi Shiite militias and terrorist organizations in the West Bank, and still Hezbollah still has thousands of fighters. So, one should not underestimate the ability of the regime to strike back against Israeli and Jewish targets around the world, and not get too, celebratory in terms of what Israeli initial success is. It's going to be a long, tough fight, but I think the Israelis decided the only way they win this fight is on offense.
Is the Supreme Leader himself a target, Mark?
I think he is. Yeah, I think he should certainly think of himself as a target. I mean, the Israelis showed tonight that they're willing to go after the highest level officials in the regime, and so how Khamenei responds will determine if the Israelis decide to take it directly to him. And he is absolutely vulnerable. I mean, he has been penetrated, and his senior advisors have been penetrated, and everybody inside Iran, everybody inside the regime has to believe that at any point in time, Mossad and other elements of the Israeli security establishment could kill them. So they've got to be very careful.
Just got this in, Mark. Isaac Herzog has posted a statement. He's the president of Israel. He says, last night, Israel launched a targeted operation to neutralize an immediate and existential threat to our people. The international community has seen how, over the last decades, the Iranian regime, at the helm of a global terror empire, has continued to radicalize and destabilize the region with its proxies, while working relentlessly to advance its military nuclear capabilities and expand its ballistic missile arsenal. Iran's leaders have made no secret of their openly repeated intention to annihilate the state of Israel. For years, the regime has prepared to turn that vision into reality. Israel has the inherent right and the solemn duty to defend itself, and will always do so with determination and clarity. We sincerely hope that this will change the trajectory of our region toward a more peaceful and prosperous future. Closing thoughts, Mark, before we go here. Anything stick out to you about Herzog's words there?
Yeah, I mean, what really stood out to me, and I think President Herzog and Prime Minister Netanyahu and many Israelis have been sending this message, and that is that, at the end of the day, they have no quarrel with the Iranian people. I mean, I think that if there was a free Iran, that was free of the Islamic Republic, I think Iran and Israel would have close, warm relations, and it's very clear that there's an opportunity not just for the Abraham Accords between Israel and its Arab neighbors, but call it the Cyrus Accords between a free Iran and Israel. And for the Iranian people who've been on the streets, millions of them yelling death to the dictator, President Obama, President Biden, President Trump, are you with us or are you with the dictator? And have found American presidents willing to write letters to the Supreme Leader to try to engage in negotiations, but have been doing very little to support these Iranians who have been on the streets since 2009. I think the Israelis are the ones who have now given the Iranian people a real opportunity as they've weakened the security establishment, taken out these Iranian officials who've got the blood of not just Israelis and Americans on their hands, but the blood of Iranians on their hands, that there's really providing some space for the Iranian people to take to the streets and to change this government and to bring in the kind of prosperity and peace and dignity that they're so entitled to. So I am actually, ultimately optimistic. I think the Islamic Republic will end up in the ash heap of history like other brutal dictatorships, and I think there will be one day a peace agreement between a free Iran and Israel, and I think that really will be historic, not only for the region, but incredibly important for the United States and our own security interests.
One more thing. I know I keep saying one more thing, but we do have Trump's schedule for tomorrow. The only thing on his agenda, Mark, is at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, the president is going to attend a National Security Council meeting. What are you looking to hear from President Trump tomorrow, Mark?
Well, I'd like to hear from President Trump that if the regime in Iran attacks U.S. people, U.S. personnel, U.S. interests, U.S. allies, that he is committed to using American power in all its dimensions to ensure that Iran will never get a nuclear weapon, and that Khamenei is risking his regime. That's a very important message of deterrence. If President Trump wants to prevent any further escalation or this turning into a wider war, he is the single most important person in the world to deliver that message to the regime in Iran. That's what I want to hear. I think any distancing from Israel will only make it more likely that there will be violent escalation and more likely that there'll be war. I think this is the moment where Israel and the United States have to be closely aligned, strong partners, and in doing so, that will create the message of deterrence that I've talked about throughout this conversation. They can minimize the kind of escalation that we're likely to see from Khamenei and the IRGC.
Mark Dubowitz is the CEO of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Thanks for staying up late with us. We'll talk soon.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.